You've probably looked at a map of South America and assumed that all the countries there share the same continental identity. But what if I told you that 3 territories, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, are actually not South American at all? Sounds absurd, right? It's exactly this belief that's preventing you from understanding one of the most fascinating curiosities of world geography. The truth is that maps lie about cultural identity. Just because something is drawn as part of a continent doesn't mean it culturally belongs to it. It's like Alaska with the United States, but in the case of the Guianas, it's the opposite. They are physically connected but culturally disconnected from South America. The reality is that the Guianas are Caribbean, African, Indian, European, everything but South American. And when you discover why this happened, your perspective on geography will change forever. Get ready to uncover the most surprising story of rejection and isolation that explains why these 3 regions are South America's best-kept secret. Imagine a region that has existed for over 2 billion years, completely isolated from the rest of the continent by nearly impassable natural barriers. This is one of the most fascinating curiosities of world geography, the Guiana Shield, which encompasses Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. Unlike any other geological formation, this region has undergone unique events since the Precambrian era, creating a true world apart. It's as if nature built a natural fortress, protecting these territories from any significant external influence. Few places in the world managed to maintain such geographical independence for so long. What makes this region even more fascinating are its table mountains called tepuis, enormous rock blocks with vertical faces on all sides, rising majestically above the landscape. These formations, especially in the Guiana highlands, create a scene that looks like it's from another planet. It's impossible not to be impressed when you realize that these geological structures are far older than anything we find in the United States or most of the world. Nature itself created barriers that completely isolated this region from the rest of South America. Imagine trying to cross this natural maze centuries ago. It was virtually impossible. About 80 to 90% of this region is covered by a dense, impenetrable rainforest, creating one of the least inhabited places on the entire planet. This jungle is so dense that life in the interior is virtually impossible for any civilization. It's one of the most impressive curiosities of geography, a territory that, even though it is in South America, remains completely disconnected from it. Nature literally drew invisible borders that are more effective than any man-made barrier. And this is just the first piece of the puzzle that explains why these lands developed a completely different identity. Nature could not have created a more challenging terrain if it had tried intentionally. The Guianas are a true water maze, with an intricate network of rivers and streams all flowing northward, emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. The largest of them, the Essequibo River, runs the entire length of Guyana from the Brazilian border to the capital, Georgetown, but navigating these waters is an extremely dangerous adventure. Unpredictable rapids and countless sandbanks at the river mouths make travel virtually impossible. It's one of the most intriguing curiosities of geography. Rivers that should be pathways have become even more effective natural barriers. The soil throughout the region is soft and swampy due to this extensive river network, making inland walking highly impractical. Imagine trying to build roads or railways on terrain that literally sinks beneath your feet. That's exactly what happens here. Unlike the United States, where westward expansion was possible through more stable lands, the Guianas remained inaccessible for centuries. The only area suitable for large-scale habitation is along the Atlantic coast, where a series of channels has been dug to regulate water flow. These channels have hardened the coastal soil, making it more suitable for construction and urban development. As a result of this hostile geography, the 3 capitals, Georgetown, Paramaribo, and Cayenne, are all situated along the Atlantic Ocean. It's fascinating to realize how nature literally forced all civilization into a narrow coastal strip. To complete this peculiar scene, there are several savannas scattered throughout the region, the complete opposite of the dominant tropical rainforest biome. These savannas are arid and flat, seeming more suited to Africa than South America. The Rupununi savanna, which extends to the border with Brazil, perfectly exemplifies this strange geographical contradiction. It's as if pieces from different continents had been mixed into a single region, creating a unique geographical mosaic in the world. The most ironic story of American colonization took place right here, in the Guianas. In 1494, long before any Europeans set foot in this region, the Spanish and Portuguese empires signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, dividing the Western Hemisphere on the map and claiming their respective halves. According to this agreement, the Guianas were officially considered Spanish territory. But here is one of the most fascinating curiosities of geography and history: the Spanish simply didn't consider the region worth their time or effort. It's as if someone inherited a valuable property and decided to abandon it because it seemed too difficult to develop. This decision would completely change the course of South American history. When Christopher Columbus first spotted the region in 1498, he didn't even land, a clear sign of how challenging the area appeared even to the most experienced explorers. It wasn't until 1594, almost 100 years later, that Sir Walter Raleigh, a British statesman and explorer, finally explored the area properly. During all that time, the Spanish were busy extracting gold and silver from other parts of South America, regions that seemed much more accessible and profitable. Imagine the mindset of the time: why struggle against an impossible geography when there are treasures that are easier to reach? The United States faced similar challenges with Alaska, but eventually recognized its strategic value, something the Spanish never did with the Guianas. The Spanish rejection opened a unique opportunity for other European powers. Throughout the 17th century, three empires, British, French, and Dutch, established colonies that served as trading posts along the Atlantic coast. The British founded British Guiana, now Guyana, the Dutch created Dutch Guiana, now Suriname, and the French established French Guiana. It's one of the most fascinating curiosities of colonial history, a region officially claimed by Spain that became a battleground among three other European powers. This rejection by Spain would forever shape the unique identity of these lands, creating something completely different from the rest of South America, and establishing connections that last to this day. What happened in the Guianas after the Spanish rejection is one of the most dynamic and chaotic stories of American colonization. Throughout the 17th century, the British, French, and Dutch engaged in constant wars against each other, with the Guianas frequently changing hands among these three empires. It was like a geopolitical game of chess where the territory was the most valuable piece on the board. Imagine the confusion of the local inhabitants, who saw different flags waving over their territories every few years. This instability lasted until 1814, when the Treaty of London was finally signed, officially recognizing the territories of each country and bringing an end to the wars in the region. During the 17th and 18th centuries, these three empires operated sugar plantations in the Guianas, sending the production back to Europe through slave labor. The transatlantic slave trade brought between 10 to 15 million Africans to the Americas, with a significant number being taken to the Guianas. At one point, the enslaved African population outnumbered the white population by a ratio of 3 to 1. It is one of the most striking curiosities of demographic geography. A small region concentrated one of the largest enslaved populations in the Americas. At the same time, many indigenous people from the Guianas and the Caribbean were also forced into slavery, creating a forced ethnic mix that would forever shape the region's identity. The abolition of slavery occurred at different times for each empire. Britain was the first, passing the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833, followed by France in 1848, and finally, the Dutch ended slavery in Dutch Guiana in 1873. But the story didn't end there. Each empire brought in contracted workers to replace the slaves and continue the sugar harvest. These workers came from colonies around the world: India, China, Java. Unlike the United States, where immigration followed more predictable patterns, the Guianas became a unique ethnic melting pot. Eventually, this region transformed into one of the most ethnically diverse places on Earth, a characteristic that remains to this day. What happened in the Guianas during the centuries of slavery created something completely unique in world history. When enslaved Africans, indigenous people of the Guianas, and Caribbean peoples were forced to live and work together, something extraordinary emerged from this tragedy, a new Afro-Caribbean culture. This fusion was neither planned nor desired by the colonizers. It was a natural survival response from people who had to adapt to impossible circumstances. It is one of the most fascinating curiosities of cultural geography, how different ethnicities, even under inhuman conditions, are able to create completely new identities. This new culture would be fundamentally different from anything seen in the rest of South America. The region's unique geography played a crucial role in this cultural formation. Due to the challenging terrain that isolated the Guianas from the interior of the continent, these populations maintained much stronger connections with the Caribbean islands to the north than with the South American territories to the south. The native peoples, known as the Arawak and Carib Indians, had been regularly traveling between the Guianas and the Caribbean islands thousands of years before the arrival of Europeans. They were the first to notice the abundance of rivers in the region and called it the land of many waters, from where the name Guianas originates today. This ancestral connection to the Caribbean, combined with the massive African influence, created an identity that looked to the sea, not the continent. The geographical isolation from the rest of South America was crucial in preserving this unique identity. While countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile developed cultures influenced by their continental connections, the Guianas remained oriented toward the Atlantic and the Caribbean. It's striking how geography can shape culture. Just as the United States developed an Atlantic identity distinct from its interior, the Guianas created a Caribbean identity on South American soil. The natural barrier of the Guiana Shield not only physically isolated the region but also culturally protected this new Afro-Caribbean identity from continental influences. This cultural separation would only deepen over time, creating differences that persist to this day. Prepare for one of the most surprising curiosities of world demographic geography. In today's Guianas, with a combined total population of around 1.7 million people, the most common ethnicity is neither white nor black, it is Indian. That's right, people of Indian descent, the descendants of contract workers who originally came from the Indian subcontinent, make up the majority of the population in both Guyana and Suriname. After them, there are large populations of African, European, Chinese, and Indonesian descent. It's as if the entire world sent representatives to settle in this small region. This ethnic diversity is so striking that it makes even the United States, known as a melting pot of cultures, seem homogeneous by comparison. Guyana holds the unique title of being the only English-speaking country in all of South America, with 214,000 square kilometers, ironically almost the same size as Great Britain, and a population of over 800,000 people. Suriname is the only country in the world outside of Europe where Dutch is the sole official language, covering 163,000 square kilometers with just over 632,000 inhabitants, making it the smallest independent country in South America. Meanwhile, French Guiana, with 84,000 square kilometers and about 290,000 people, remains an overseas department of France, where its inhabitants are citizens of the European Union and use the euro as currency. This unique political configuration creates one of the most fascinating situations in world political geography. A large population spread across all three areas is made up of the Amerindian peoples, descendants of the native and Caribbean indigenous peoples. The connection between the Guianas and the Caribbean is so strong that both Guyana and Suriname are members of CARICOM, the Caribbean Community and Common Market. This allows for closer economic and social ties among the member states and demonstrates how the Guianas are intrinsically linked to the Caribbean islands. They cannot be separated. The capital of Suriname, Paramaribo, has become world-renowned for its cuisine, offering dishes from practically every corner of the world due to this incredible cultural mix. This ethnic diversity is not just a statistical curiosity, it completely defines the soul and identity of these nations. The Guianas are truly a strange place when we consider all the factors together. If the region's geography had been more accessible and navigable, it's highly likely that the Spanish would have colonized the area, preventing the British, Dutch, and French from ever establishing themselves there, and the course of history would have been completely different. But nature had other plans. What was once considered the rejected child of South America has transformed into a unique melting pot of cultures that does not exist anywhere else in the world. It is one of the most fascinating curiosities of cultural geography, how physical isolation can create completely distinct identities, even within the same continent. To this day, the Guianas are not culturally South American because they were rejected by the Spanish hundreds of years ago. This historical rejection has forever shaped their identity. While the rest of South America developed land and cultural connections, the Guianas kept their focus on the sea and the Caribbean. It's as if they are permanent embassies of the Caribbean world on South American soil. The difference is so striking that when we think of South American countries, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, we rarely include the Guianas in the conversation, and there is a deep historical and cultural reason for that. The United States faced similar challenges in regional integration but managed to create a unified continental identity, something that has never happened between the Guianas and their South American neighbors. The Guianas are not South American in the cultural and identity sense. They are Caribbean, they are Indian, they are African, they are European, they are simply the Guianas. This multiple and unique identity is the direct result of centuries of geographical isolation, Spanish colonial rejection, and an unprecedented ethnic mix in world history. It is living proof that physical location does not determine cultural identity. When you understand this complex history, you realize how much more interconnected and fascinating the world is than we imagine. And perhaps the greatest lesson the Guianas teach us is that the true identity of a place goes far beyond the lines drawn on maps. Now you know the truth that few people are aware of. The Guianas are not South American because history and geography conspired to create something completely unique in the world. If something as obvious as continental location can deceive us, how many other truths are you accepting without questioning? The knowledge you've just acquired puts you in a privileged position. You now understand something that most people are completely unaware of. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary people is exactly this: the ability to see beyond the obvious and question what everyone else accepts as normal. If this content opened your mind to a new perspective, leave a like so more people can discover this fascinating geographical curiosity. Share it with your friends. I guarantee they'll be amazed by this revelation. And if you want to keep discovering secrets that completely change your worldview, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This journey of discovery is just beginning.